You're already recording. Oh my goodness. Okay.
Well, you already giggled.
That's
Everybody loves
true.
to hear people giggling.
That is true, I guess.
You've been out running already this morning?
Yeah, I went because I don't know, I find that sometimes like the time in the afternoon just kind of gets away from me and then it's
Mhm.
like, oh, I have to log into class already. And so
Yeah.
I
And
figured it
also,
was
you don't want to
easier.
go for a run and then come back and not have enough time to sort of get ready for class.
Yeah, and
Mm.
also like yeah, I wanted to maybe do some reading before class and I have to go to my parents' place because my sister, I don't know, yesterday she sent me like a weird text message,
Yeah.
something about
About
like
your mum.
yes, and so now I don't know like is it serious or not, you know? So
So you
anyway,
have to go and check for yourself.
yeah, pretty
You didn't
much,
do
yeah.
like Mother's Day yesterday?
No.
Yeah. You don't do that stuff.
I don't know. Like we're at a loss of really how to celebrate anything. Or at least I am. I don't know if my sister maybe has some ideas because she's better at this kind of stuff than I am. I'm like more of a doer. I'm kind of like, okay, like you need
You're
your
very
wall
practical and
painted.
functional, and you're not
Yeah.
very emotional and cuddly.
No, but I didn't really, I didn't really get the cuddly when I
Treatment.
was no, when I was a kid. So I think like
Okay, well,
the first time I cuddled anyone really that I remember was I had this really um cuddly friend in high school. She was like my best friend and she was very touchy and like she would hug me and
is
I
she
would kind of be
Italian?
like,
Italians are
yes, she
like
was
that. There
Italian.
you
Yeah.
go.
And she would hug me and I would just be like, not sure what to do.
Did you like stand all stiff and like,
Yes.
oh, yeah.
That was exactly me. So, like, I mean, I think I'm more cuddly now because, like I'll cuddle with Andre, but I had to learn that. It wasn't like because it wasn't taught to me
Yeah,
before,
you
you
didn't grow
know?
up doing it.
No.
Mel and I's approach with our three was
Mm-hmm.
we used to have a thing called the big family cuddle.
Mm-hmm.
So Susie
That
will tell
sounds
you about
fun.
it. Wherever you are, you shout, all join into the big family cuddle. And everybody has to come running in and hug. And you just hug out. You just hug out for whatever the reason is. You just hug out for a minute or, 10
Oh,
seconds or whatever suits you, but you have to come in and hug. So that was the way that we
okay.
kind of did it with our family.
Yeah.
You didn't have that when you were
I
small.
definitely did not have family cuddles. No,
Okay.
no. Yeah. And so like now, I mean, now that I'm an adult, like sometimes so my dad has started giving me hugs when I leave, but it like he never did that before.
Uh,
So like, yeah,
he realizes, his time
maybe
on Earth is limited and,
maybe I don't know. Yeah.
there you
So,
go.
yeah, it's interesting. It's interesting. Families are
Next time your dad gives you a
strange.
hug, you should go, all join into the big family cuddle and give the
Yeah.
come here to your mum.
Yeah,
That'd work.
maybe or maybe not. I guess it's
Yeah.
worth a try though, but okay.
Should we do a podcast?
I think we should do the podcast because that's what people are going to tune in for, not talking about cuddling.
Oh, you don't know.
Maybe. I don't know.
Hi, this is Running Book Reviews. In case, well, I don't know why we would say this is Running Book Reviews because you press the button to get Running Book Reviews. Like you're expecting it to be Running Book Reviews.
Yeah,
So
or at
I
least we
guess
hope
this is
you're
just to
expecting that.
confirm that you pressed the right button. This is Running Book Reviews. This is our 10 book summary program. If you've never given us a review, please go and rate us so we can get a few more reviews on Apple or a few more stars on Spotify or wherever it is that you listen. Or leave us a comment or something. We're not getting enough feedback from you guys, and we need a little bit more. We really appreciate it, and it helps us along, keeps us motivated as well.
We actually, our podcast is on YouTube, and I've discovered that people actually listen to the podcast on YouTube, even though there's no video. It's really just the podcast and audio with like our logo showing. We have some subscribers, and on YouTube, it's really easy to leave us a comment. So if you wanted to leave us a comment there, that's okay
that's
too.
that. Yeah, that's good, and we'll see your comments, and we can comment on your comments. Without further ado, let's get on with our 10-book review.
Okay. So let's start with book number 1, which is Running from Tragedy by Michael Salsbury.
Hang on, before we start, which number books are these?
Oh, this one is 101 to 110. We've already read like 3-digit number of books. Isn't that great, Alan? Do you feel any smarter?
A little bit. I was talking to somebody the other day and I said, hey, hold on. I've read 100 running books. And that's so, and then I said something about running. So it was like my way of saying, so what I'm about to say is credible because I've read 100 running books.
Yeah. Except, did you notice that it's as if like the more books we read, the more books we find out about that we haven't read?
Yeah.
Like, do you feel that way? Because like, I definitely feel like
I feel I'm getting behind.
Like the more that I read, the more underaccomplished I feel.
Yeah. Yeah, and you go, well, I read 3 years ago something about, I don't know, carb loading. Well, it's kind of gone out of date. You know, there's different views now.
Anyway, it's great because it means that the podcast can go on for many years to come because there are lots of books that we haven't read.
The very first book we read, I think, was Kicksology, or was by Brian Metzler, or
I
one
think
of the
it was
first
one
two.
of that was one of the first
books.
books. Yeah. I think the first book that we made a podcast episode about was the Hansen. Was it the Hansen Marathon
Method?
Method?
Yeah, it could have been. But what I was going to say about Kicksology was we read that book, and that was before Super Shoes. So, like, the book has kind of been destroyed by.
I know. He needs to make a second edition.
By the wave of Super Shoes and maximal shoes.
Yeah, and all the new foams, because now you have like there was the P backs for a while, and now there's like all these other blends that they're making with hydrogen infused and
and
TPU and well, I think TPU already existed, but
but now they're doing combos.
Yeah, so it's really interesting.
Okay, so Running from Tragedy by Michael Salsbury is our Dalmatian book.
Oh, yeah, that's true. Yeah. 101.
101.
Yeah. I was like, where are you going with that?
Yeah. You didn't quite get on the end of that, did you? Okay.
No, but that's okay. I should have because like I watched that movie because it's, a movie about lots of dogs running around, which is always fun, right? What did you think of this book, or what did you learn, or?
Well, tragedy is certainly a good word to have in the title, I think. And it's quite early in the book that you find this out, so it's not giving the game away. Michael loses 3 children to a strange sort of brain disease that affects them when they're in their first year. So he has these nice babies, and then they go all sort of epileptic, and they have some sort of brain thing that's undiagnosed, and they die.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, it was very moving. But this set of books starts off pretty dark, actually, with the tragedies that Michael Salisbury lived. And it was brilliant listening to him talk because he's kind of learned to deal. And I think a lot of that was, running was helping him stay sane for a while. And he's eventually able to raise a family. So I guess if you learn one thing from this book is whatever shit you're going through, you can come out the other end. If he can come out the other end of what he went through.
I guess I learned about vanishing white matter, which is
that was
the
disease
that his children. It's a genetic disease, and luckily, because of his family, now they're able to test for it. But it's like ultra, ultra rare. I mean,
Mm.
that's why nobody knew what it was at the beginning. So, and I don't think there's any cure. It's just they can test for it now, I think,
For people who haven't,
in pregnancy.
I guess runners are sort of tuning in here. They don't want to deal with tragedy, but
Hmm.
there's a lot of running and meaningful running in the book. Um, but for people who've never heard the podcast, I would sort of say go back and listen to our episode with Michael Salsbury. We just sat and listened to him describing how it feels to watch, your child fade away in front of you. And, you know,
Mm.
certainly when I was reading it in the book, I've said before, I don't cry very easily, but I was crying while I was reading the book. Do you take caffeine when you run? Lots of people do because it's in gels and stuff. And caffeine's legal and it's been proven to work. There's actual science that shows that it improves your endurance running performance.
And there's anecdotal data from when you have your coffee in the morning and you go for a workout versus when you forgot to have your coffee or you didn't have time and you went for a workout and it was terrible.
And the trouble with coffee is there's a lot of liquid just to get your caffeine dose.
Yeah, so then you have to stop for the bathroom mid-workout. Very impractical. Which is where Caffeine Bullet comes in.
What's caffeine bullet, Liz?
It's a caffeine supplement. It's wrapped up like in a candy. So, and it tastes like candy. And you can get 100 milligrams or 85 milligrams, which is about a cup of coffee, but without the liquid.
So we've tried the mint flavor and the chocolate orange flavor, and they're both pretty yummy.
If you want to try them for yourself, we do have a 20% off discount code. So go to the link in the show notes and you can check out what Caffeine Bullet is and get your 20% discount.
Pretty generous.
It is pretty generous.
And we'll get a small benefit, so you're helping out the
Speaking of which, back to the podcast. I definitely cried.
yeah.
If you don't like crying, then maybe you don't want to read this book. But well, I don't think anybody likes crying.
Take some tissues with you.
Yeah, have a Kleenex box. It kind of just hits you like at one point. I don't know.
Mm.
Like I was fine. I was reading, and all of a sudden I'm reading and bawling. So
Well,
yeah,
amazing story. And now he has a
it
son
is.
who's a high level ultra runner, very
Yes.
competitive ultra runner. So, and he has a family, he has two children, and he has a family who are all
Well,
runners
he
now.
has three altogether with the ultra runner son. The
Oh, is that
ultra
right?
run. Yeah.
Okay.
He would have had like six children if
Yes,
they
he
had
would
all
have. Yes.
lived. Yeah,
Yeah.
which is remarkable. But it sounds like they always wanted a big family,
Hmm.
which
Yeah, they
actually
kept going.
that's another thing. Like I find that, they lived through all this tragedy and they're still together, like him and his
Well,
wife. And
I think it makes or
it's
break you. You're either bonding
yeah,
stronger or you fall apart.
it's incredible because like you hear all kinds of stories of
His personal story is good as well. He's traveling around and had a lot of experiences.
mhm,
Um,
lived in a lot of
so
interesting places.
pretty cool one.
Yeah. Okay, next.
Yeah,
This one's also a little bit dark.
yeah, that's
Uh,
what I was thinking. Yeah,
Running Through the Dark by
we're
Jen
going
Scotney. I know
we're going through our depressive phase.
we
We
were
probably
we were
lost
reading
we
these.
probably lost about 50% of our listeners. Oh
Oh,
God, I'm putting on the
yeah.
podcast to read about running books, and
Mm.
Alan
But
and Liz are just serving me up a plate of depression.
this one had a lot of running in it because it's by Jen Scotney and it's her aspirations to run the Pennine Way, which I guess is a big thing if you live in the UK. It's where the spine race is.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
basically the mountains up the middle of the England, particularly towards the north,
Hmm.
um, sort of north of England into Scotland.
Yeah, and
Pennines.
she had like a kind of like a personal attachment to that route, and she really wanted to run.
Yeah, she hiked it with as a child. She hiked it with her parents quite
Hmm.
a lot.
So she wanted to run it, and she was preparing because it's like a very long way to go. I can't remember how many miles, but
The whole
it's
Pennine Way, those things, 260 something miles.
yeah,
But
that's a long way to
it's
go.
fairly inhospitable weather as well, usually.
Hmm. Yeah, if you've ever watched like the live feeds of the spine race, you'll
Yeah.
see like every year without fail, like it's like hailing, snowing,
Yeah, it's horrible,
freezing.
isn't it?
It's they're being like practically blown off the ridge
Yeah, you
with
get the
like
like
horizontal winds.
horizontal rain and
Yeah.
yeah.
It's unbelievable. So
They'll
yeah,
say,
some
"Oh,
tough
I slept
runners.
behind a wall
Yeah.
for 3 hours while the rain was battering the other side of the wall."
Yep. Yeah. I kept warm in a garbage bag. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's like it's unbelievable. But yeah, so she really she had prepared for a long time and she was preparing for years and
And she was actually one of the UK's best ultra runners at one stage.
hmm
She was quite well known,
hmm
quite famous. But what I didn't know was at the same time she was struggling all the time with, I guess, what's called chronic fatigue syndrome.
yeah.
She's sort of absolutely fatigued out, but at the same time trying to do ultra runs, and she ended up getting loads of injuries and
hmm
and working constantly on trying to combat this fatigue syndrome, trying all sorts of things.
Yeah.
So it was a huge struggle.
I guess the problem with this chronic fatigue syndrome is that well, it's a syndrome, so it's not really like a diagnosis, and it's like a collection of symptoms. And so
Yeah.
what doctors do is they rule out like that you don't have anything else going on, and then well, you'll be diagnosed with this chronic fatigue syndrome. But it's like kind of unpredictable. It's a bit like some days you can't get out of bed, and some days you're fine. And poor Jen was like a pretty high achiever, had like a very
Mm.
demanding job,
Yeah, she's
was
incredibly
really good.
devoted to her sort of legal work.
Yeah.
Mm.
And eventually she just, she couldn't do that. And then little by little,
Yeah.
it's like she, she ran less and less because she just couldn't. And
I guess
yeah.
ultimately she had to focus on coaching and using her knowledge. Um,
Hmm. And so she never actually did this big goal that she was working so hard to
yeah.
do. The thing that I came away with is that, sometimes when you're preparing for this big goal that you have, like you don't actually know if you're gonna achieve it or not. Um, but I guess,
I wonder what you're referring to.
yeah, well, for me it's that sub three, obviously, right? Like
Yeah.
I don't know, like I've been hammering at it for years and maybe I'm gonna be like Jen and I'm never gonna achieve it, but
Yeah.
um But yeah, I mean, for now, I think I'm better off because I'm still running. But yeah, it's sometimes like that parallel was sort of what I thought of when I thought of this book because she was so devoted and she just worked so hard. And it was like, it was within the realm of possibility at the time that she decided that she had this goal. It wasn't like far out there. She ran some big ultras and I think she placed
Yeah.
pretty high in some of them.
Yeah.
So she was like a really good runner.
Yeah. I mean, to that extent, it gave her, hope and belief.
Hmm.
But her body kind of wouldn't take her there. So it made for great reading
It
and
did,
very
yeah.
honest and very raw.
Hmm. I think if you need something, if you're going through some kind of personal struggle and you just need to not feel alone, like I feel like this is the kind of book. It's like, well, everybody has their own struggles. Sometimes you don't really see them. And she's a perfect example because, she was so like when she was performing, she was like a high performer and in everything she did, it seemed like. So it was just, but she just started to struggle and I guess at first, like it wasn't noticeable and later it was, but yeah, you never know what people are going through.
And every story doesn't have, superb happy endings.
Hmm. So next, Built to Run.
By Matthew Silver, Dr. Matthew Silver. This was so good, we had to have 2 episodes. Yeah.
Yeah, it was also so packed with information that it
Yeah.
deserved 2 episodes because
Yeah.
like yeah, we couldn't we just scraped the surface in our first
Mm.
podcast, and then there were a few topics that Matt was just very passionate about. So he offered to come back on, and of course, like we said yes, right? Because
Yeah. So if you're looking for that on the podcast, make sure you get both episodes.
so he's a PT, and he kind of developed this book that addresses certain things that runners might need. And he talks about obviously built to run. So there's like exercises and tests you can do on yourself and all those
Yeah.
kinds of
Lots of
things.
lots of
Talks about,
mobility and strength stuff.
mm-hmm. Yep, but he does have like a few chapters at the end that are a little bit like extras, I guess, like things that you don't usually think about, or things that we think about, but it's like a little hard to address. So, form was one thing.
Hmm.
And then there was a whole chapter about breathing,
Yeah,
which was actually fascinating.
it is. Yeah.
Yeah, he talked about like that sometimes breathing exercises can help runners to tolerate higher CO2 levels, which I found was like interesting, you know?
That's like
So,
breath holds type,
yeah.
different types of breath holds.
Yeah, and you do it in swimming because I remember
Yeah.
like I started off in swimming and this was something we talked about in like the second episode, but in swimming we used to do lengths of the pool where you were not allowed to breathe every like in front crawl. You wanted to breathe every second stroke when you were going fast, but you weren't allowed to. So you had to hold it until the third stroke or until the fourth stroke, and you could keep going. Like I think sometimes it was like only breathe every five.
So you're teaching your
And
body to get more comfortable with a higher level of probably CO2
yeah,
in your lungs, because that's the
yeah,
thing that triggers your will to breathe or your signal to breathe.
that's how he explained it in the book, and it made a lot of sense. But back when I was swimming, I was like a kid. So the way that they explained it to us was that, it breaks your I guess your rhythm and your form when you have to breathe. So like you want to do it the least possible. You don't want to be breathing every two. You want to be breathing like less often. Um,
Yeah, but oxygen's a good thing.
it is, yeah, absolutely.
Didn't Zatopek in his training? I'm just throwing back to long, long ago, the Day We Die a Little, the Emil
Hmm.
Zatopek book. Zatopek did breath training as well. He'd hold his breath and
Yes,
run.
he would just hold his breath and run a sprint
Yeah.
or things like that.
To get
Um,
uncomfortable with or get comfortable with not quite having enough oxygen.
hmm He did a lot of like unconventional things though, and I
Yeah.
think it was just like the restriction of his job because he was in the army.
Hmm.
So sometimes like he had to stand watch. And so he would be standing somewhere. So what he would do is he would do like in place high knees,
Yes.
or like it was like snowing and he was in
Yeah.
the woods and deep snow, so he would like run through deep snow. Yeah, so he did all kinds of like at the time like
Yeah.
strange things.
So now,
But he was the
people
best.
like Matthew Silver are bringing it back as science. He was
Yes.
doing it empirically, just by feel.
Hmm.
It's
Yeah.
quite a bit on feet in
Hmm.
on your foot in Built to Run, which is good because it's the first thing. Everything comes from putting your foot on the ground and how it's behaving. So
Yeah.
I think it's good not to neglect that.
Yeah, that was a good chapter. I guess the two things I learned, well, not that I learned a whole bunch of stuff, but the two things that kind of stood out when I was thinking back to this book was when he said that the single best exercise for runners. So if you
Hmm.
don't want to do any strength training, but you're willing to do one exercise 3 times a week, you can do the
Yeah,
split squat.
yeah,
That's like the single best
yeah.
exercise. And then
Or the couch
um,
stretch.
the couch stretch, yeah. So you do actually want to do two exercises.
Yeah. The good thing about the couch stretch is you can do it while you're watching
Watching
TV.
TV.
It's
Yeah.
kind of like a split squat, really, isn't it?
It is just
Yeah,
you're holding it so you can get a stretch out of it.
yeah.
Also, when he talks about form, he says the first place you should work on is overstriding
Striding.
because often it fixes like a lot of the other
Yeah.
issues.
Yeah, I thought a brilliant thing about Matt's book and the thing I liked the most was the way he talked about form and gave like 6 adjustments, but also in sequence. Says,
Yeah.
so overstriding is the first thing you've got to think about. Like your cadence might be wrong, but if you try to fix your cadence before you're overstriding, if you're overstriding, then you'll just end up in more trouble. So he actually puts the suggested correctives in
In
sequence, in
order.
order,
Yeah. Yeah,
which
which
I
is
thought
super
was quite neat.
helpful. Yeah, because I think like another thing he says is one thing at a time, because I think a lot of
Mm.
people they're like, "Oh, form, okay. Okay, I'm going to work on my form." And then they're thinking about
Yeah.
like, "Oh, I have to be
You
tall
gotta
and I
get
have to not
tall, gotta get my
overstride and
knees
my cadence
forward,
is
lift
down."
my ankles
Yeah.
up.
Yeah, and it's too much. It's too many
Yeah.
things all at once. Like you kind of have to work on one thing at a time, kind of let it I guess let it sink in and become automatic and then, so over time, like a few weeks and then work on something else after, um, which made a lot of sense.
Yeah, good stuff. And he's got another book in the works, so we'll we'll,
Hmm.
we'll be watching for that because
Definitely.
definite good value.
Yes.
Practical stuff, things you can do easily, things that you can fit into your routine, like while you're watching Netflix, you could be doing a couch stretch and holding your breath.
Exactly. Yes, you could. Yeah.
There you go.
Yep. And what I really liked was the book is really thick, but there's a reason for that. He's got all the things that he does, he will usually have photos of like the correct way to do it. And then like also the way not to do it, which is
Yeah,
like always super helpful because sometimes,
yeah.
you're looking in the mirror and you're looking at the picture and you're like, I think I look like that, but it's like it could be very subtle. And he
Mm.
shows photos of both, which is like good on him. That was super helpful.
Yeah, super practical.
Hmm.
Well done, Matt.
Okay, next, something that everybody in the UK likes,
The
Parkrun.
Ultimate Guide to Parkrun by Lucy Waterlow.
This book was basically all about Parkrun, like what it is, um, how it's evolved over time.
Yeah. I mean it's comprehensive, isn't it? It covers
Yeah,
everything. History, who does it,
yeah.
where it happens,
It
I guess
even
what it
says,
is.
yeah, how you can set up your own, which was interesting. Like, she had a whole chapter at the end, just like the steps to setting up your own Parkrun.
Yeah, maybe for our North American people who might be listening who are not regulars, we should tell them what a park run is because lots of people think, oh, you go for a run in the park.
Hmm. But well, that's what it is. But it's
Kind
more
of.
organized than that.
It's basically a free volunteer run, free 5K
That happens every single Saturday.
timed event. So you get a time and it happens every Saturday, usually at the same time, around usually at 9, but different places have different start times.
The idea is that it has to be consistent. So it happens every Saturday at like whatever time. So 9 is, I guess, the suggested time, but like some areas of the world will do different things. Like if it's really hot, then like in the tropics, they do 7.
And if you go to parkrun.com, you'll see all the park runs in the world. There are hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of them, probably thousands.
Hmm.
It started by a South African guy who lived in England. So the first park runs were in England, but South Africa actually has the biggest park runs in terms of the most people. There are hundreds of park runs in Australia. In North America, not so many. There are about 50 in Canada, I think. And there are some in the USA. Major cities in the USA have them. So you can go on the website and just look for one. If you happen to be in one of the countries that have them, you'll find out where the nearest one is to you.
Hmm.
I think there's one about half an hour from us in Montreal.
Yep.
I mean, there's only one in Montreal. I was looking in London when I was doing the London Marathon a few weeks ago, and there's like one every
Every park has one.
there's there's like one every 3 miles or something. Yeah,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
they have hundreds of people.
Yeah, in the UK, what's amazing about Parkrun is that even non-runners know what Parkrun is, and there are people that just volunteer. They go for the social like every
Mm,
Saturday morning, and they
mm,
just volunteer.
yeah,
They actually have maybe some of them never run the Parkrun. They just accumulate like volunteering park
credits.
runs.
Yeah,
Yeah. I mean, it doesn't
Yeah.
give you anything. It's just like you can say you can accumulate runs, you can accumulate volunteers.
Yeah,
So
you
it,
register once on the website and you get a barcode that you can use it at all runs. And your account will keep measure of all your statistics, the time and place of every run, your average times, which ones you've run, how many you've run in. And if you've done 25 runs, that that's the first milestone where you can get a t-shirt with Parkrun 25 on it. And you see people with these things with like Parkrun 250.
yeah,
These are like
that's incredible.
the legends of Parkrun. Um, but same for volunteers as well, is what I was going to say. If you
Yeah.
volunteer 10 times, 20 times, 30 times, you can get a volunteer t-shirt. So you get volunteer credits.
But 250 is a lot because it means that you volunteered or you ran park run every Saturday for like 5 years,
That's right.
which is incredible. I guess you can also say like every second park run in 10 years,
Yeah,
but it's like it's like a lot of it's a commitment.
it is. Yeah. And it's an institution in some places, and people go every week and they see their friends there.
Yeah, it's like a social thing. I think it's like more social from what your wife was saying. Melanie, she said, in the UK, like people kind of chit chat and know each
Yeah, they
other, and I
do.
think there's coffee
Yeah.
after and stuff. And
Yeah.
I think like the hours in Montreal, like sometimes it's social, sometimes it's not. That's kind of what I don't know.
Well, there's an indoor area where you can get coffee.
Maybe depending on who shows up, like not
Yeah.
people don't stay necessarily
I
or
I think the thing is, you can talk to people if you're on your own, but we tend to go as a group, so we tend to stay as a group and we talk to each other as a group, and then we end up not
not
mingling
socializing.
so much.
Yeah.
Yeah. The book is fantastic. It's sort of like a sort of magazine style. Reminded me a bit of Claire Maxted's books. That got beautiful color photographs in, and you go, "Ooh, that looks nice. Oh, that looks
Yeah.
good." And
Yeah.
Lucy Waterlow seemed to know everything you could possibly want to know about
Know about
Parkrun.
Parkrun. Yeah, she
Yeah,
was a fountain of information.
yeah,
I learned about something. I learned about junior Parkrun, which I think
yeah,
is like less well known, and
yeah.
I don't think we have any in Canada.
No, I don't
But
think so. That's a 2K event
it's
rather
a
than
2K
5K.
event, and they don't hold it on the same day, so they hold it on the Sunday instead of the Saturday. But it's the same idea where like it needs to be the same, like the same time every week, and it needs to happen weekly. So you'd have like a different set of organizers for a junior park run, even if it was like at the same park because otherwise it would be a burden, for
Hmm.
like same group to be organizing 2 days of activity
Yeah.
every single week. But yeah, it's for kids basically. So it's only 2K, and
I think what Parkrun
I
try to
thought
do
that
is
was fun.
they're trying to get everybody involved.
Mm-hmm.
So they try to be inclusive.
Mm-hmm.
So they say, well, we don't want small children running 5K. We don't want them to be unaccompanied. So they make a separate event.
Yeah.
I think children over 11 can run normal park run 5K. So they're happy with that. Also, they're very, very accepting of walkers. So park walk is an acceptable thing. So even if you
Mm-hmm.
think, oh, I couldn't run 5K, you don't have to. Just go out there and walk. And you can bring your dog as well. So,
Yeah.
and your stroller with your baby in it.
Yep.
So they're trying to be inclusive. It's not just for racers. They tend to be, I think the faster runners tend to be the sort of minority almost. So you can
Yeah.
run quick at the front or you can just walk at the back. And no one ever comes last because one of the roles of the volunteers is to be the tail walker to make sure everybody gets in and they always
Mm-hmm.
finish at the end. So they're always the last
They're
person to
last.
arrive.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah, that was a good book.
Excellent institution.
Yeah. So on to the next one. There is no finish, which this is the other end of the spectrum.
Yeah.
You have the fun park run, and this
Mm.
is the
The
grueling,
wonderful, wild, and wacky world of backyard ultras.
yep, by Stephen Parker. So the book is called There Is No Finish. I didn't know that Backyard Ultra before you explain what it is. For the listeners that might not know, I didn't know
Mm.
that the Backyard Ultra was another Lazarus Lake baby. So Lazarus
Yeah.
Lake is the Barkley Marathons organizer. Like he's well known for that. I had no idea that this was also something that he
Hmm.
came up with. So that was interesting. I
Yeah,
learned that
yeah.
in
For
Stephen's
those who
book.
don't know what is a backyard ultra, the idea was to do a loop of Lazarus Lake's backyard, basically, which is about 6.6 kilometers. The
Yeah, it's
idea
something
be
strange. Yeah,
Well, I
6.7.
explain why it is what it is in a second, because what you do is you do a loop and you have an hour to do that loop. And at the end of an hour, a bell rings. And when the bell rings at the end of the hour, you have to be on the start line, ready to go. Usually there's a box drawn. You have to be in that box, ready to go on the next loop. So you have to do a loop every hour. And the
Mm-hmm.
idea of having 6.6, whatever it is, kilometers or 4.2 miles is that over 24 hours, it equates to 100 miles, is it? 100,
Yeah, 100 miles.
yeah, 100
Yeah.
miles. So the idea is if you can do it for 24 hours, run one loop every hour on the hour.
Now you've done 100 miles in 24 hours,
That's it. And so that's the
which,
idea of the distance.
yeah,
But that's not all because it just keeps going until everybody drops out.
except one person.
Yeah. So
And that's the
everybody
winner.
so everybody gets a DNF
Yeah.
except for the one person who's left who has to do one loop, finish one loop on their own, and they declared the winner, and they have to stop at that point. They can't keep going. They can't go,
Yeah.
oh well, I want to go for a personal record. No, 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 no. That's it. It's finished.
So that's a fascinating bit because
Yeah.
that means that if you wanted a personal record, you actually need to seek out backyard ultras where people perform well or like I guess seek out partners that are
Yeah.
going for like high scores
Yeah.
so that you can do a personal best. Because if you go to a backyard and everybody like stops after 15 loops, well, you can run 16, but you'll have to stop after 16.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So then you get this notion of the assist. So you say, oh, somebody X person has won the backyard ultra. Let's say they set a world record. They were assisted by someone else because they have to be there in order to enable the winner to do that many laps.
Yeah.
So they have kind of a status, although they get DNF
Yeah.
next to their name.
So let's just talk about a piece of news that my husband found on Facebook recently. The record was broken. I don't know if it was at the championship last at the end of last year or something,
Yeah,
or more recently than that.
yeah,
But the record is now 116 laps, which is
hmm
777 kilometers, which
yeah,
wild.
yeah,
And that means that the person that lost came
yeah,
second,
yeah.
had to
Ran
run
one
115 laps,
and gets DNF.
and he gets a DNF for all his effort.
That's why it's the wacky world.
Yeah. Yeah, it's crazy.
But it's incredible how the athletes have learned to be able to run for 4 days round the clock,
Hmm.
and they get very slow. So often they might take 50 minutes to get round the loop, and they've only got 10 minutes or 5 minutes or 3 minutes before they have to start again. The other thing is there's no feed stations. You can't stop on the way around. You can only stop at the end.
Yeah.
When you finish your
And the
loop,
feed
you can go and
station, I
sit.
think, is
You can go and
yours.
you can go and sit down and have a foot rub or have a two
Yeah.
minute sleep.
Yeah.
Uh, and
Yeah.
and
Which is a
so
strategy.
yeah,
It's a,
some
so
people do.
Stephen talks about all of these
Yeah.
like people's different strategies because he's done some of these backyard ultras and
Hmm.
so he's met people and he's yeah he's found out about different strategies that they have and this like having like a 2 minute sleep is actually a strategy that's used to be able to like last several days.
Yeah, or you run 10 laps slightly quicker so you can have a 6 minute sleep for
Yeah.
10 laps,
Yeah.
and then you run a little bit slower to recover from that. absolutely bonkers.
Yeah. And you kind of need to have like a pit crew at the end, so that they could
Yeah.
so you could sit down and put your feet up and get ready for your next lap. So they would be the ones that would like, you know,
Mm.
put food in your hand and fill up your water bottles and what's interesting is and I find this like this is kind of customary of all trail events, but you'll have like people that have DNF'd will start helping the people that are left running.
Yeah, trying to
So if
get
they
them to go
don't have a
further.
crew. Yeah,
Yeah.
which is like I love that about trail running, even though,
Yeah.
I'm not a trail runner.
It was quite cool having Stevens describe to us how it feels when I don't know, you've done 20 laps or something and you go, that's it. I can't do another step. And then someone persuades you to get it, persuades you, oh no, just give it a try, and
Yeah,
persuades you to
just get
get
to
it.
the start line
Go
and
to
see
the
what
start line and
happens.
see what happens when the bell rings and persuade you to sort of do it. But then, you're saying, okay, I can't possibly do it. But then you go for another 3 or 4 laps. So the mental aspects of breaking this is impossible and then going again,
Which
is
is what
kind of
happens in
fascinating.
ultras, it seems like
Yeah.
a lot. But
Yeah.
this is like, it's almost like it's almost like, when you have a really long run to do and you purposely don't run loops around your house because the temptation to stop is like would
When
be
you go
too
past
big.
your
So
house. Yeah.
so you just you run like a far bit out, so you have to run back, and
Yeah.
that's your way to force just. But this is
Yeah.
like this
The
means that
reverse.
yeah, it's the reverse. It's like running loops around your house and you could stop at any, like on any loop when you get back to your house.
Yeah. You've got to
Um,
force yourself to go again.
yeah.
Typical Lazarus Lake thing where
Yeah.
you have the mental pressure on you.
Mm-hmm.
We heard as well that there's a world championship format now, so lots of countries have their own national backyard ultra, where say all the people in Belgium, all the people in Australia will do their own national ones, and whoever wins, they all come to the world championships. So you get the
Yeah.
winner of the Belgian event, and then the winner of the Australian event, and then the winner of the Canadian event, all coming to one place, usually in Tennessee, with where at Lazarus Lake's hometown or
Yeah. And it's a
homestead.
very small, a small final race again,
Mm,
because it's like, I think it was 70
yeah,
runners or something like that, because I mean, it's around his backyard or something. So
yeah,
it's not like it can't accommodate a whole bunch of people. And so basically all the countries can send their winner, and then the remaining spots are like the people that scored the highest. So that's a problem, because if you're in a country where your countryman wins in like 10 laps, well, if you're second, like you don't have a chance to.
yeah. Some countries are more accomplished than others.
Yeah.
Strangely, Belgium
Yeah, they seem to be really good
seem
at
to be
this
the
backyard
world's
thing.
number one. They have like 3 or 4 really, really good people.
Yeah, and they all like get together and run together and push each other, which is it's I guess
Yeah.
interesting.
They also have team events where you can put a national team in, and then your score is the number of laps added up for all of your people. If you've got lots of people who are maybe not the best, but are like top 20,
Yeah.
you can win like the overall country team event
Mm-hmm.
because you got to accumulate an accumulated number of laps.
Yeah.
Pretty fascinated stuff. Stephen was trying to get us to go off and do one somewhere, and
Yeah.
he actually mailed us
He
some
said
events and some events in our area, I think in
yeah, there's
Quebec.
one. Yeah, there's one not far, but it happens in like no wait, it's in November. No, not November. Anyway, it happens in the fall, but I think
Yeah.
it might not be the warmest you know, on that day because of the time of the year that it is. So,
Well, I'd be okay, but you'd probably struggle. And if it's in
yeah.
summer, the reverse is true.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, moving on.
Yeah.
Next one is To the Limit by Michael Crawley. So,
Superbly written book. I think
Again,
it's been
yep.
nominated for some prizes. Totally different to his previous book, which
Hmm.
was about his time in Ethiopia.
Yeah,
Um,
totally different, but kind of the same in that
yeah,
he likes to explore like the lives and the circumstances of the
yeah,
people. So it's like the stories of the people, but like as well as,
yeah, like sort of
like
the
what
human
their
social
yeah, what the social context is
behavioral.
and
I think that
hmm
comes from his research.
yeah.
He sort of does research in those areas.
Yeah, but this book had like a wide variety of it was
Yeah,
exploring endurance, but it wasn't just running, although a lot of it was running.
yeah,
He starts with visiting the Tarahumara
yeah.
to, get
Or the
their,
Raramuri, as he calls
yeah,
them. Yeah,
yeah, who were featured in Born to Run, but he's visiting them like I guess years after they were initially
yeah.
featured in
And
Born to
trying to
Run.
understand them rather than having them be a backdrop to an event, which Born to Run they kind of were a little bit.
Hmm. Yeah.
So you get more insight into their behaviors and their background.
There were a few stories that I had kind of heard over the years, like either reading them in magazines or something else. One of them was the story of Mira Ray.
Yep.
So I think I read about her
In
in a
Nepal.
magazine. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, well, I went to run in Nepal in 2018, and she's famous in Nepal. She's
yeah.
like a superstar.
And yeah, so he talks about some of those stories and also just like the social context around them. So Mira Ray is like a good example of just like she's kind of an outlier in how successful she managed to become, despite, I guess the social context in
Her
that
background, yeah,
Nepal, yeah, I mean, they don't have a lot of money, like they can't travel to races. It's hard to get
yeah.
sponsorships because they don't necessarily speak English, although Mira Ray
Mm.
does, and
And they
she
don't necessarily have equal opportunities for women.
Yep, that
Yeah.
too. So yeah, he revisits some stories that like maybe a lot of people have read, but it's always in a kind of like in a bigger picture sort of
He also,
approach.
in the book, through different stories and different interviews with people, examines things like climate change and the behaviors of some endurance sort of activists around climate change, technology.
Hmm.
So, is it really a good idea to have all this tech in running? Is it improving? Is it actually taking away your feel for how to run well?
Yeah.
The debates around that. Social media, athletes having to now try to supplement their income by being internet stars, or
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, or being
we all
chosen
follow some people
on
on
Instagram
yeah
and
on
maybe not
social media,
others. Yeah.
yeah, and are they doing that because they think it's fun, or are they doing that because they kind of have to? Because if they don't, they're not going to be able to have professional careers.
Yeah, because he explains that sometimes for the sponsorships now, the companies don't just look at are you fast enough? They're like, if they have a choice between fast and social media following or just
Yeah.
fast, they're gonna pick fast with a social media following
Yeah.
because
So then
they
is that
figure
going to
it's
work
like
against people who don't have good English language skills, don't present well in social media?
he talks about all of that. So it was a fascinating book. It was a good
Mm.
read. Like his other book, he writes really well and
Yeah.
yeah.
Fantastic read.
Hmm.
More rather than his last book was kind of a whole book about a whole subject, which is the Ethiopian like running.
Running. Yeah. This
You
was
know,
scattered all over the
this
globe.
was this was chapter by chapter, different aspects.
Hmm.
Yeah, and scattered all over the globe, as you say. It's a good way of putting it. Good stuff.
Next one was The Frontrunner by Brad Fawley. So this one was different because
A
it was
fiction book.
a
Yeah.
fiction book. Yep. So, I mean, we can't really give away too much of the story. We did
Yeah, but they all
talk
die.
about
They all die in the end. That's
that's not how it goes. Don't
that's what
listen.
people say for movies, you know. Don't want to give it
Well,
away, but they all die in the end.
Well, then fine then. I'm not gonna watch the movie. Also, they don't all die at the end.
No.
But yeah, I mean, the story is amazing. It's sort of like two separate stories that happen in two separate areas of the world. So,
Hmm.
one story is in Russia and one story is in the US in a small town.
Yeah.
And so these runners from these two parts of the world, they end up meeting. They're like youth kind of development
Yeah.
runners and they become like really good runners and they meet on the world stage.
And you think it's going to be like the James Bond type thing, our hero, the American, is going to go up against the bad guys from Russia. You kind of feel that at the beginning, but as the story rolls out, it gets more nuanced. So you start to see it a bit differently, I think.
And there's some interesting characters which we talked about in our last podcast. So, like the characters are just really well developed, and the relationships between the characters is at times like complex. So there's like a lot of layers to the story.
Yeah.
So it was a really good, it was just a really good read. So this one, I just wrote that like if I had the time, I would reread that book
Yeah, I would
because
too.
it was really
I
good.
agree. It's one of the best fiction books that I've read about running, modern
Not that
ones.
there are
At least.
a whole lot
Too
of
many.
fiction
Yeah.
books about running, but
Yeah.
yeah,
Well,
it was really
what I
good.
liked about it is that it takes a lot of real training techniques, all the splits and those kind of things, and the types of training and the development. It takes like all those real things and puts them into the book, and actually takes in a lot of real history as well. So the background you hear about, real people, and so it takes all of the reality of training and history and then mixes it in with some sort of extrapolation, some fictional pieces. Because of that, I think it's sort of incredibly realistic, even though it's
Hmm.
fiction, because you
Yeah,
go, okay, he's doing this type of training, or he's in this type of event.
yeah,
He doesn't go to run a fictional event. He goes to run the pre-classic or something like
yeah,
that. Yeah.
yeah,
So you
yeah.
know what that is, and you can kind of invest yourself into it really hard. Also, the descriptions of the races were for me fantastic.
Hmm.
You sort of live the race with the runners, and that was quite cool. In fact, I criticized Brad because he shortcut some of the races because he one our hero was running some heats and he just said, "Oh, he did the heat and he finished in this time." I go, "No, no, 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 you can't do that. You have to describe how he ran and all that so
Yeah.
I can enjoy it."
But he said he had to like sort of make it that it's not just,
Yeah,
that anybody can read it,
exactly.
not
Not
just,
everybody
yeah. Not everybody wants
wants
to
to
read
do
like
that.
a
Yeah,
whole detailed like, description of
yeah,
like the three heats of the 1500, you know?
yeah. But that's kind of I wanted to do that.
Yeah. They should have like, so this book was pretty long. Like, I think it was like 400 pages.
Hmm.
They should have the optional 500-page version
The
for the like
unabridged version, yeah, the
for the
unedited
Allens of the
version.
world.
Get the special edition,
Yeah.
director's cut from Brad
Hmm.
Fawley. Yeah. So a lot of fun, and
Yeah.
if you like running, and you want to turn away from the seriousness and just basically plunge into a great experience, The Frontrunner is a superb book for that.
Yeah. Maybe something to read like if you're gonna be tapering for the marathon, you have
Yeah,
all this extra time that you're not training.
yeah,
So you can read something that, is running related, but it's not like workouts or
yeah,
how to get mentally prepared for your race because at this point, like you should already be, you shouldn't be second
yeah.
guessing. So you can just read like a nice fiction
Or if you're
novel
vacationing
that'll,
and you're going to sit by the pool or something, I don't
yeah,
know.
yeah. And you need a good book. Definitely, definitely good
We
for that.
recommend that.
Yeah. You can read it anytime, but um those two scenarios just seem like good times in the
Yeah.
year to read it.
Moving on.
Moving on
The
to
Ultimate Ultra Running Handbook by Claire Maxted.
if this one sounds familiar, it's because she also wrote the Ultimate Trail Running Handbook. So it sounds the same, but it's not the same. So
Hmm.
this is the ultra running version. And actually, when
Yeah.
we interviewed Claire, she said that initially when she was going to write the book, she thought, oh, well, I already have the outline, I already have a lot of the material, it's going to be the same. And she found out that, like, actually, no, there was a
It's
lot
almost
of,
entirely different. Yeah.
yeah, the chapter naming is very different. And yeah, she said that there was a lot of additional information that she had to kind of write in because it's different for these ultra races. I mean, even though a lot of them and like are on the trail, so that part is the same.
Yeah.
Um, there's a lot of like special things like fueling for, events that are longer than 8 hours. And
I would say it was kind of people who are going out and taking their trailing more seriously. Doesn't mean necessarily faster, but it's the more serious long distance trail uh eventer.
yeah, yeah, because she talks about kind of like she did for trail running, where she talks about gear and things. But for
Yeah.
ultra running, it's also talking about, well, having a plan and maybe a crew and looking at different things about a race to before you decide which one to do. Because, there are races where just the challenges require special gear, special equipment, or require you to have a crew or, those kinds of things. So like I guess she gets more into the all the things that you sort of have to look at before you pick one of these ultra running events because yeah, the difficulty is not always in the kilometers. Sometimes it's in the everything else.
Yeah. I think one of the things that road runners tend to get wrong is they look at how far is this ultra run,
Hmm.
and they go, okay, I'm used to looking at runs in numbers of kilometers, but in fact, the numbers of kilometers do not equate to degree of difficulty.
Yeah.
It's the terrain,
Yeah.
the vert being a key one.
Yeah. One of the things I learned in this book, she talks about energy gels and drinks, and she mentions like that if you're gonna run more than 7 or 8 hours, you want to start thinking about some real food options because you're gonna like A, get palate fatigue, and B,
Hmm.
like just need more than just
Yeah.
sweet energy drinks.
You can't take 75 gels in one event,
No,
and that's
no.
all. Yeah.
You're
You have
not
to have a
definitely not gonna want to, that's for
you have to have a
sure.
burger or a chicken sandwich
Yep.
and you have to work out which of those is good for you before
Yeah.
you start getting halfway through an ultra event and finding out that you can't tolerate a burger or
Mm-hmm. And she
yeah.
also says that you have to have some options because sometimes what usually works at like, I don't know, hour 10 on that particular day, you might feel like I can't get this down. So you might actually need something completely different. So she talks about
Yeah.
like having options, which is, something that, we don't really like. I think road running, we don't really think about that. It's like, oh, well, I'm gonna mix it up. I'm gonna like put some lemon flavored goose in between my plain flavored Mortons, So, but this is more like you want to have actually different foods.
Types of
So,
foods. Yeah.
yeah, so like chicken burger versus like I don't know, maybe you want some watermelon.
Yeah, and it could be your body actually craving certain things that it's in need of. So you have to listen to that a little bit.
Yeah.
Certainly, ultra running, what becomes very clear reading Claire's book is ultra running is a team sport. It's not you running
Hmm.
on your own.
No.
You need people around you who are going to look after you and um, be able to move around and feed you and bring stuff to different places to keep you going, basically. Maybe changing clothing if the weather changes.
Yeah. Also for training, if you're gonna go out and do like you know, a 20-mile run in the mountains, like you kind of want a buddy to do that with. Like it makes it all
Mm,
the more enjoyable. And
yeah,
for her personally, because she has a baby at home, was a baby when we spoke with
yeah,
her. But yeah, so she also mentions like, the time in your life, like Is the time in your life right for you doing, I don't know, your first 100-mile race? Because, you need a lot of training and things like
Yeah,
that. So,
there's a certain self-indulgence around that. So you've got to, be able to allocate a lot of time to yourself to do that.
when you have a newborn, it might not be the time. And maybe you wait till they're 5 years old and it's like easier to get some training time in yeah.
Unless you
Or
unless you're Jasmine Paris, in which case it just
you
makes you
just
stronger.
breastfeed yeah, you just
Yeah,
put the
just
baby in
breastfeed
your
it.
backpack and you
Yeah,
breastfeed it like at the aid
seems like that,
stations.
doesn't it?
I mean, there are ways sometimes that you have to be creative, but like it just goes to show you that there are a lot of like
There are ways.
strong women
Yeah,
that do like amazing
yeah,
things. Yeah. But again, it's a team thing. Like Jasmine Paris is famous for breastfeeding her babe, her like 3-month-old or something
yeah. While
at
doing
aid
the
stations,
spine
but
race. Yeah,
but it's her spouse had to bring the baby to all those aid stations,
I guess.
like so they had a whole plan for that. So it's like it's also having the support of your family.
Yeah, quite right. The book itself is like a magazine style sort of presentation with glossy
Glossy
pages
pages.
and loads of color pictures and illustrations, and you don't get a list of gear, you get pictures of all the gear. And
Yeah. So
yeah,
if you liked like if you've read Claire Maxted's like trail running handbook, it's the same sort of format.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's
And
almost coffee table sort of type thing. It's got so
yeah,
many pictures in it. And Claire herself is
a
quite
YouTuber.
quite present on YouTube. Yeah, she's got, so if you're interested in gear, you can go to her. I think it's Wild Ginger Runner is
Hmm.
her handle. Um, Go to her YouTube site and just search some gear, and she's probably done a whole review on it. She's got
Yeah.
lots of
Yeah.
extensive gear reviews and other stuff.
And I think she also just does videos about like topics in trail running or ultra running. So she's a good resource. If you're not sure you want the book, well, go watch a few videos first and you can kind of get a feel for how knowledgeable she is. And
Hmm.
yeah, she's definitely done a lot of things.
Yeah,
Even though in the interview she was kind of like, well, like I'm not a fast runner, like I don't really care about time and
yeah,
whatever, but
yeah.
it doesn't undermine her
She's not an Olympic runner, but she's an Olympic enthusiast. Yeah.
yes.
Her enthusiasm is fantastic. Yeah.
Yeah.
Moving on.
Yes.
Running Past 50 by Caolan MacMahon.
So she's one of our more recent guests. This book was all about running past 50. A lot of the principles are just, good for all of us, but she specifically addresses the book to masters runners over 50. Because, I mean, they consider you a masters if you're like 35 in running,
Yeah,
which is,
I think in general it's basically it contains practical advice for as you're progressing
hmm.
in age, and it's not just, well, I just show up and I get a PR,
Yeah.
or I want to run fast, I'll just go and run fast.
Hmm.
But you get to the point where you think, well, I've reached those sorts of limits and I have to look after myself a little bit, and my legs ache in the morning after a hard workout or whatever. Then,
Yeah.
all good advice for people who are just progressing in age.
Hmm. And she says it doesn't mean that you can't have like big goals and, expectations of performance. It's just the way you go about it and the way you, I guess, move up to that. Because,
Yeah.
so in her book, like the one thing that I remembered from the book was her whole idea of de, she calls it a deloading cycle, was basically like a
Hmm.
detraining cycle.
Hmm.
And she says like a lot of masters, actually a lot of runners in general, they don't do this. It's basically a time of the year where you take a break. So you do like she has like a whole protocol for it. It's like 4 weeks long, where you do like
Hmm.
no exercise or well, definitely no running for a week. Then you go to adding like a couple short, easy runs, but very short, or doing like cross training for the second week, and then you start building back your volume. And She says that then this prepares you to go attack your next training cycle, but you've allowed your body like time to repair and
Yeah.
consolidate what you got before. Most people don't do that even after a marathon. So it was interesting. It was good that she put that in. We used to do that with my previous coach. It was like we
Hmm.
had twice a year mandatory running breaks. This was in university.
What on earth will you do if you have a mandatory running break?
You know what?
You'll
That's
go
what I used to
bonkers.
ask my coach. Like I was like,
You have to stack up Netflix series to
yeah,
watch.
I was like, I have way too much extra time.
We just sit down and read the Frontrunner by Brad Fawley again. There you go. Now you've got the answer.
There we go. There we go. That's so that would be what I would do now. But at the time, I
Yeah,
didn't know Brad
yeah,
Foley hadn't written his book yet.
yeah. I think what the sort of theme that runs through Caolan's book is as you get older, you got to get smarter.
Mm,
So you don't have to settle. Like you don't have to go, oh, well, I'm older, so now I can't run fast. Yes, you can.
yeah,
I'm older, so I can't PR my, I don't know, my marathon time. Well, maybe you can, but you're older, so now you can't just goof off your training the way you used to. You've got to
hmm,
be a bit more focused and have a bit more thinking about what you're doing. Strength training is not something you do if you feel like it. Strength training is something you have to integrate into your training program,
yeah,
et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And you need to make small adjustments that are smarter and smarter in a gradual way.
yeah,
And don't try to bite a huge piece off the cake. Nibble it little piece at a time. That's kind of the sort of messages I was getting all the time through Caolan's book, through her writing, which is great.
yeah,
Fantastic stuff.
yeah. That was a good book. But this is like more. It's a traditional, training book. It's all about
Yeah,
training
yeah,
principles and all of that. So if that's
yeah,
what you're looking for, this is definitely the book for you.
yeah. So if you're listening to a podcast and you haven't listened to that one, you probably should because training books seem to be the most popular thing on our podcast, we find.
Yeah,
And that's
yeah. I guess that's
even
like
if
the
you're
first,
even
that's
if
the
you're 40,
entry.
you should still read it. You should still listen to the podcast. Even
Yeah,
if you're
it's
35, you should probably still listen to it.
never too early to prepare for your
Yeah.
50s.
If if you're 12, you probably don't need to
Don't
listen
need to
to it.
listen to the podcast.
Yeah. Forget it. Go and play Pokemon or something. Um,
I don't think that's a thing anymore.
uh, there you go. Giving away my age. Go and
Yeah.
play Fortnite. There
Oh,
you
there
go.
we go. I think that sounds familiar. Yeah,
There you go.
that might be more more popular. Um, so moving on to our last book in this 10 book series
Serious?
was A Few More Laps by David Chalfen, which was a fascinating book.
Yeah.
David was like a fascinating guest because he actually
Mm,
hasn't run in decades, but
yeah.
he is so involved in the running community through coaching. He's
Mm,
like worked all kinds of interesting jobs, like
yeah.
tried very interesting things like setting up a training camp in Kenya, which like we talk about in the episode, so you can go back and listen to
Yeah.
that. But yeah, it doesn't work out. But it's yeah, it's he has a lot of interesting experience, and what he writes in the book, he kind of gives like his thoughts about it. So it's a bit like a memoir, but a
Yeah.
little bit less about him only. It's more about his journey to all these different and interesting jobs he had within running and people he met along the way, people he's coached, and
I mean, he's been right to the sort of top levels in the UK in
mhm,
the running club scenes, national qualification type levels, and involved in the admin of running. And so you get an insight into the politics behind the admin and the behaviors of some people and the dubious behaviors of some people managing East African athletes in particular, I think sometimes.
Yeah.
Corruption's not a word really that I would use for, but dubious practices, I think
Hmm.
you see sometimes. And so you kind of get an insight into things that you normally don't see
Yeah.
or normally don't think about. You know, if you're
Yeah.
a runner, you turn up, you go,
Yep.
okay, what are we running? And you run. You don't
Yeah.
really think about what's going on.
Or if you're like a fan of running, you kind of
Yeah.
like you tune in and you watch
What
people
should,
running really fast and
yeah,
you know they're from like, I don't know, Kenya or Ethiopia or Morocco or
yeah,
and you don't really know much about these athletes because a lot of them don't have like social media accounts that are in English
yeah.
or things like
You
that.
know, they might
So,
be running in something big like the London Marathon. You know, and
yeah.
they're in the lead group, and you don't know them. You don't know how
Mm,
they got there. You don't know what they had to do to get there. You don't know how they pay for what they're doing, given where they
yeah.
come from, and
Yeah.
yeah,
And
who
it's really
might be
not
cashing
as
in behind the scenes. Um,
yeah, yeah. We think that the runners get like 100% of their prize money, but they don't.
mm,
Um, so, I mean, in the worst cases, sometimes they just don't see any money. But even, you know, when like when they're in an honest sort of relationship with an agent, I mean, agents get like 15%, I think, of the winnings. It's like so right off the bat, they're down to like
yeah,
85%.
they've got all their add-ons in terms of expenses, and if they, you know, they got no social media presence, like we heard from Michael Crawley, um, you know, nobody's really interested in them very much. Um, so it's hard for them to get sponsorships.
Yeah.
So
So,
it's not an equal playing field. I mean, some people they say, oh, it's you know, it's not fair. Those guys are just naturally faster runners, and it's not an equal playing field for us trying to compete with them. And then from their perspective, they say, well, those guys just have it all on a plate. It's so much more difficult for us to get into the spotlight.
it's more difficult because it's a bit like wanting to play high level hockey in Canada. Like all the kids are in hockey in Canada and they
Yeah,
all want to go far in hockey.
yeah,
So you have a lot of competitions, but that's how
yeah,
running is in like Ethiopia and Kenya and maybe
yeah,
Morocco and you know all those places that produce these great runners. I mean, it's like their national sport. So
mm,
yeah, it's going to be harder from that perspective, which is, you know, I mean, it is what it is, but then there's also like the economic side. It's not like the parents can put them on a flight to go run some marathon major. It's
yeah,
because it's like they make so little money that they like they wouldn't be able to sort of bet on themselves. You know, they kind of have to have someone that's gonna bet on them and you know send them to a big
yeah.
race.
And
Yeah.
for every Kipchoge or Evans Chebet, there are, you know, thousands and thousands of people doing huge amounts of training and never, you know, making enough money to feed themselves or their family.
Yeah.
Which was only part of the book. In fact,
No, yeah, it
we're
was
diving into that, but it was only part of the book.
yeah.
Um,
I was actually a small part, but
yeah,
yeah, there's a lot of things he talks a lot about the UK club scene and his experience in
yeah,
that um and he was a pretty fast runner in his day when he was running too. So talks a bit about like those days when he was running. So it was, you know, few decades ago. So
yeah. He's
um
pretty old school as well.
yeah.
Comes
Yeah.
from a background where, you know, coaches didn't get paid to coach.
Yeah.
It's like,
Yeah.
no, you just do it because you kind of love it.
Yeah.
You have another job somewhere else that pays.
Which and in there's no other sport really like that.
No.
And I think running's changing, so now, you know,
Yeah.
coaches can get paid, you know, but people won't like push back on that too much. But yeah, I mean, because the thing is, like, as a coach, I mean, even we know that. I mean, as a coach, you don't just coach. It's not like free. It's like sometimes, you know, you're paying to use platforms to push workouts to your athletes, and you're paying for a website, and you're paying for coaching courses and certifications and all these things. And it's like, well, I mean, like then
How do I cover that?
how do you cover that? Yeah, exactly. Exactly. So
It's a bit like podcasting, really.
it is. Yeah. It's like, well, I mean, we have a podcast, like, but I mean, it's a low entry fee, but it's not no entry fee,
Yeah.
So
Okay,
Mhm.
so good insight from a coach at a top level,
Yeah, it was good.
old school.
Old school. And that's it. That's it for the 10 books
That's it for 10 books.
until we read another 10.
So all we need to do is wrap up, unless you've got anything else you want to say about the books. I guess we had a good mixture of books,
We did,
story,
yeah.
insights, sort of biographies, fiction,
Mm-hmm.
technical books,
Yep.
training, bit of
We do
history.
try and mix it up. Sometimes it's not possible. Like it kind of depends. Like sometimes people approach us and, if it's like a newish book, then they're usually sometimes they're keen to talk
Time
about
constrained,
it.
yeah.
And yeah, a little time constrained. So, but I mean, yeah, we had a pretty good mix for this last 10, I think. And I think we have a pretty good mix like coming for the next 10.
Well, we usually have, half a dozen books in the warehouse, so to speak.
Yeah.
So we try to pick books that not just the same stuff.
Mm-hmm. Or not the same stuff back to back. I mean, I
But
think
if
okay.
anybody's listening and you have some preferences, send us a note or leave a comment on one of our social media things. We'd be super interested to hear from you and what you like and what you don't like.
Absolutely.
In the
Yeah.
meantime, we'll have more books coming up. And
So don't forget to subscribe to the podcast so you get to download. It'll auto download and it'll be ready for you to listen.
that's the way to go. And we don't have to worry about coming on here and trying to persuade you to click the buttons.
That's it for now from Running Book Reviews.
Okay, bye.
Bye.